I am so happy to finally be getting you in the recording studio, Ameris. I've been knowing you now for many months. Your output is stunning. You seem like a normal human, but you output these volumes of things that are just very incredible. So I want the audience to know a little bit. I want to start with this Puerto Rican girl in Philadelphia living with her grandmother in the Badlands. Can you tell
Okay.
everyone what I'm talking about?
Yes, yes. I was born and raised in Philadelphia. And as the rap song goes, right? In North Philadelphia, I was born and raised. In the Badlands is where I spent most of my days. I was literally born in an area where generational cycle poverty was not the exception, it was the norm. And my mother, God bless her little heart, was unable to take care of her children. She was a teen mom. I believe she was 17 when she had me and 15 when she had my brother. And so my grandmother, Catalina, raised me until right before I turned 7, and then she passed away. And life was good when she was raising us because she was taking very good care of us and made sure that we had everything that we needed. And my whole world got flipped, turned upside down when my mother took over because my mother was a child herself and didn't know how to raise children. And that's where I really started to understand what it means to live in the hood. Because before that, my grandmother had sheltered us, going to church every Sunday and playing outside and being called in to eat good food that she cooked, home cooked food, and all the good stuff. My grandmother was the one who actually inspired me, even though she had passed away, because I do feel connected to her in many ways. She is the one who I believe I inherited my courage, integrity, and determination from. And I like all good acronyms. Kid yourself with a C instead of a K.
That's something that I want to just talk about for a little bit because everything else that you do makes sense to all of us when we look at the 7 years. And those 7 years of security, tell us about this Puerto Rican grandma a little
Yeah.
bit. Like, what do you remember most?
I remember most the safety that she provided because when I decided to go to college and took my little night classes and I learned about Maslow's hierarchy and at the very foundation is safety and security. And I took that for granted, not realizing how important that is for every human being, right? To have that sense of safety and security within the environment that they're in. And so the number one thing that I would say about her was her ability to make those around her, not just the grandchildren that she was raising, but anybody around her to feel safe, both physically and emotionally. Because I often remember hearing conversations going on in the kitchen, la cocina, and the chatter and the gossip, and people would come over with their problems and share with her. And I would hear her reassuring people and providing them a sense of safety that they probably otherwise wouldn't have gotten wherever they were at before they walked into my grandmother's apartment.
Wow, wow, that's really good. And so now you're thrown into chaos. Your mom at when you were 7, she's probably like 24, and now you're surrounded in a tornado because your mom was doing what?
She had a lot of problems, mental problems, with trying to just live in this world, and so she turned to drugs, and at first, it started out with just regular street drugs, and eventually she, in the '80s, was turned into an actual full-blown crackhead, as they would say, right? The crack I was not a crack baby because she wasn't doing crack in the '70s, and I was born in the '70s, but in the '80s, she definitely took a bad turn and decided to numb all her pain with not just 40 ounces of Old E and Colt 45. She turned to crack. So that was something that just put her on a downward spiral and really just fast tracked my need to want to leave the house and find something better. When I was about, I want to say 11, I started selling Philadelphia soft pretzels. At the elementary school, there was a vendor who came to sell the pretzels. And so I asked, can I have a job selling pretzels? Because I wasn't getting what I needed from home from my mother. And they gave me a job doing that. And I would say that her drug habit at the time, I was really angry with her and I really wanted to get out of the neighborhood. And I started looking at options through middle school. So there were magnet schools that I could have went to. outside of our general environment. And I chose to catch a bus and a train and a subway to go to school just so that I can get away from the environment that I was in because I didn't want to see her doing what she was doing. That to me was eye opening because I got to see a world outside of my world. And I realized that what I was living in, even though I always felt it wasn't normal, was not normal. I was on this mission to figure out how to get out of the hood.
I'm seeing this elementary school kid. What were you, like 9 or 11? Can I have a job?
I want to say I was about 9. I was at 9. Pretzel vendor was at the school. I bought a pretzel for a quarter, managed to find a quarter. I don't even know where I found a quarter because we didn't get allowance and things of that nature. But I remember just straight up not being afraid and just saying, "Yeah, I would like a job." And it was illegal because anybody under the age of, I think, 15 at that time, you had to have working papers. The vendor didn't care, and he got cheap labor, and I got to have money to spend on, I think fried chicken wings and french fries were the thing that you got. It was a corner store, a corner Chinese store. They call it Chinese store, but yeah, for $2, you could get, some 6 chicken wings or 8 chicken wings and a side of fries, and that would go a long way. And that was the treat that I would have.
And then now I know the gymnastics that you have to overcome to change school systems and get transferred out. You were in middle school. Who negotiated all these changes so you could get to the other school? Did you do that?
So truth be told, I did that with the counselors. My mother wasn't involved in any of that. I had those conversations with my counselors and with the folks that I knew had the power to make it happen. I filled out all the applications with them. And even when I was in middle school looking for high school, I have a teacher. Her name is Dorothy Page, Miss Page. Shout out to Miss Page, who again saw something in me when I was in 7th grade. She encouraged me to apply to Central High School, which was the most publicly recognized public school system in Philadelphia. She encouraged me to do that and helped me walk through all the processes of making sure you had good behavior, which I was never, I was an angry child because of my circumstances, but I always knew how to come correct where I had to come correct. And so getting the A's and B's was not a problem because I had to dive into the academics to not think about what was going on at home. And getting to school on time and getting there every day was not a problem because again, I needed to I needed to get out, spend as much time outside of the environment as possible. And so Miss Dorothy Page encouraged me and helped me navigate those conversations. And at the time, Central High was only recently at that time opening up its doors to girls because it was a male only school for almost 100 years, I want to say. I could be wrong about the exact number, but 4 years before I had applied, a group of Jewish girls had gotten together and they wanted in. They wanted into this prestigious school. They sued the city and everything. I don't even know if it was the city or the school district, but it was a big deal in the news. Once they did that and successfully got in, then it allowed the rest of us marginalized community to also get in there and get those shots that we needed.
I'm glad, Ameris, that you have related that because this story of yours, this trajectory and the initiative that you showed to get yourself where you need to be, that's your magic. That's the secret sauce of what you do because you bring that to other people and you help them make that transition for themselves, ascend and transcend. Talk about the name
Yeah.
of the company.
Before I talk about the name of the company, I do want to say that for a long time, I was ashamed and embarrassed of my background. And I danced around a little bit with bringing it up at work in the early 90s. And then I quickly saw that my being open was being used against me to create this picture or this box that I needed to be in. James Baldwin has a quote that says, "You have to decide who you are and force the world to deal with you, not with their idea of you." When I came across that, I remember going, okay, I need to stop putting on this mask of pretending to be somebody else because anytime you're a person of color in the workplace, or most of the time, I should not speak in absolutes, most of the time we have to code switch, right? We have to conform and we have to fit into these boxes in order to get to the next level and help other people. Because when you're overlooked, you tend to have like x-ray vision for talent And you want to make sure that you don't overlook them either. When I came up with the name Ascend and Transcend, which was last year, as I was thinking about how can I do this? Two things that I thought about. I had jumped on the education train from GED to MBA to do all the things that people in corporate had told me I needed to do to get to the next level. And so I was ascending up the corporate ladder and more like a jungle gym because it really, in some cases, it wasn't a ladder. There were broken steps and missing steps altogether and pretty painful. And I like to call it the corporate salsa now that I think about it, because you take one step forward, one step back. Sometimes you have to spin around to dodge some microaggressions. And sometimes you have to get low to avoid getting hit with some bias. We can ascend as human beings who are trying to get to the next level wherever we're at, whether it's corporate or whether it's a nonprofit or government or, wherever we're at. But the transcend part was when I realized there's still something missing. And what's missing is transcending those limiting beliefs that we've been programmed with since an early age. And so I like to call it BS, and it's not going to be what you think it is, but it's belief systems, right? Even though that's BS too sometimes with what they try to. So transcending the belief systems and recognizing that we are enough just as we are. And while we can ascend and look to get to the next level, let us never forget our humanity. Because in the age of AI, and it's coming fast. We've all been using AI for many years, not realizing that it was AI. We just wake up in the morning, get on our phones, AI is there, get on our laptops, AI is there. In the age of AI, what I'm realizing quickly is that as people are losing their jobs due to the bots taking over their jobs, we have to take on a different skill set and learn how to use AI as a partner, as a strategic partner to supplement what we're trying to get done in the world. I'm quickly realizing that the leaders who are going to make it are the leaders who actually provide psychological safety for their team members. And that takes a whole other level of transcendence than just climbing up the good old club ladder and getting to the next level, right? That takes a whole mindset shift. I think what's happening in the world right now, from what I'm able to gather and tell, is that the younger generations, the millennials, the Gen Zs, they're waking up and they're in corporate environments and they're rejecting toxicity and saying this is not normal. And that's why we keep hearing about the great resignation and quiet quitting. And now you're going to hear about the great frustration because no longer are they even giving 2 weeks notice. The data is now showing that they're just basically handing in their laptops and just walking out because they know that at a moment's notice, their laptop can get taken away and they can get walked out with no consideration. So the transcend part is, I believe, where we're going to really need as much help as possible to transcend our situations, because not all of us are going to be able to navigate this next age that we're in without looking at what are our thought processes and how do we think about the world and what stories are we telling ourselves, right? And how do we solution for those stories?
This is where the listeners who are watching, I want them to see how much you empathize with their situation. That corporate salsa that you mentioned, it is
Mhm.
happening to all different groups of people, to all races of people now, but it's especially happening to people who are maybe minority groups. To personalize this, give us one experience that you're comfortable relating about a situation where you were the target of a non-safe environment. What happened to you?
I'm going to think of one that actually is such a long time ago. And it wasn't so much that it was non-safe. It was that it was appalling. And I have a whole arsenal of ones I can pick from. But one of the ones that was really eye-opening was I got to a certain level, which was pretty far up the ladder. And I get invited to a work event. The senior executive at the event looks over to my husband and he says, "So you're the husband of the most demanding woman in IT." The jokester in me was like, "Oh, great. He noticed I have high standards. That's so nice." But the Boricua in me and the West African in me and the Taino Indian in me were like, would he have said that to a woman? And so you're the wife of the most demanding man in IT? Would you have ever have heard him say that? No, of course not. So, and I had watched in that organization and in countless other organizations where there was a double standard, where women, the minute we even asserted ourselves, it was you're difficult, right? And if it was a man, they could outright be aggressive and get on calls and berate people and yell and throw fits, and you're getting promoted next month because you've got drive. That to me is disheartening that you do all the things that they tell you to do and you put up the most professional voice that you can put in there because we're code switching all day long and we're following the rules and making sure that we do what is expected of us. But I realized that I could not get to the next level there because they didn't look at me, not just as a woman, but as a woman of color, as someone who could even get to that point. Years before that, I have another story that's kind of related to this where I got hired in IT management, no less. And I'm excited. We are the world orientation. Everybody's in there and we're showing we could have been singing We Are the World, right? And everybody's excited. And I'm ready to get my department onboarding packet. And I'm given a uniform card for housekeeping. And I'm like, what made you think I need a uniform card for house? I mean, like Jones in a New York suit. I'm not blow dried hair straight, try to conform to the corporate image of what I should be. I have no problem with housekeepers. I love housekeepers. I have people who are friends that are housekeepers. I get a lot of respect for people who do that. But what really bothered me was the assumption that I couldn't be in a management position, in a corporate back office manager position, that I needed the housekeeping uniform card. And when this guy kept insisting, even when I said, I don't need a housekeeping uniform card. He just kept insisting. I'm like, this is not made in Manhattan. I don't understand how this is even possible. And there's countless stories like that. I have another one where I inherited a department of 2 or 3 people. I was brought in to build out a project management office. I'm told that one of my direct reports was upset, couldn't figure out if Amervis was a man's name or a woman's name. So he went and looked me up on LinkedIn. And when he saw on LinkedIn that I was visibly a woman, he went and shared verbally to the head of IT that he couldn't believe that the head of IT had hired me, a woman of color, to run a department. And so instead of getting mad, I made that the best project management office that that environment had ever seen because I felt like just show them what you're made of. Your work will speak for itself. And I've been doing that my whole entire career.
And now, a brief message from our sponsor, Alomia Health. Here's one of their co-founders, Nick Manzik.
We're building Alomia because we care about people and their mental health. You see those stats that pop up on news. You see them on article headlines. Mental health's declining. Social media is the issue. COVID was the issue. Debt, stress. The world is becoming a little more disconnected. At least that's what we're being told. We're not trying to replace therapists. We're trying to just give people another resource to work on their mental health. If we can be part of someone's mental health journey and help them start it or dive deeper or even get to a much better place, that's our goal.
Nick, thank you so much for that description of what Alomia does. Again, that's Alomia Health at alomia.com. ELOMIA. Now let's return to our conversation.
I wanted to establish that you walk the walk. You basically can talk it because you've been through it. So now your book, Leading with Psychological
Yes.
Coaching.
Yes. My
Yes.
book.
This is where I could really appreciate that book. Like, how is that book helping the person now? Because you have this soft spot from your time in Philly, all those things you had to overcome as a Latina. Now you've made it into corporate America, gotten the pushback and the stereotyping. But now, as a accomplished professional, you're reaching back to do what with this book?
Number one, to realize they're not alone. They're not crazy, because I remember going through a lot of the situations that I just shared with you and that I wrote in the book about, thinking, am I crazy? Like, because when you're gaslit, people try to make you think that you're telling yourself a story and that you're crazy. Writing about what I wrote about has been affirming in some ways, because I've had people who bought the book and read the book and shared what they thought. And they were like, all these years, I thought that I was crazy. And here I realized what they did to you is the same thing that they've done to me, or that they're still doing to me. So it's twofold. It's for the person who needs to understand that you're not crazy. Okay, you're not crazy. You're just being darbled. It's a psychological term that I discovered when somebody said to me, "You're being darbled," and it's defend, attack, reverse, victim, and offender. First, they try to defend what they do. When that doesn't work, they try to attack you, right? And then they turn around and reverse the victim and offender and make it seem like they're the victim and you're the offender. That's not okay. Google did this Project Aristotle where they looked at what were the most effective teams, and they found that the most effective teams were the ones that had psychological safety. But what they didn't do was, as part of the study, outline all the ways a leader can provide psychological safety. I mean, there's some information out there, but I wanted to make this book. At first, I started out being all ambitious, like ambitious Amervis is always trying to conquer the world. I was like, 100 ways. I can come up with 100 ways that we can provide psychological safety. And then I quickly realized that as I started to type them up, I didn't want it to be just another leadership book. You can get another leadership book with all the theory. There's thousands of them. But what I wanted to do was integrate the real life stories that we all go through and make sure that for every single one, there was an actual story that was an example of what that looks like. Both bueno, as I said, is bueno is good and no bueno is not good. I thought about that and I said, not only do I want the young emerging leaders who are coming up next, who are already here, they're already in charge, to break the cycle of toxic leadership. First, you lead yourself, and then you can lead your teams, and then you can lead the organization. But if you can't even lead yourself and you can't even recognize what you're doing wrong as a leader, then it's never going to work. You're never going to see that your turnover, and a lot of it has to do with you, that your inability to have a team that innovates has to do with you, that your performance metrics being low has to do with you as a leader. You can make all the excuses you want, but the first step is looking in the mirror and checking out what's going on with you.
That is so well explained. As I look at the entirety of what you're talking about, I start to see those counselors who helped you fill out the forms as
Mhm.
your first psychological safety zone.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm not going to pretend like I wasn't getting psychological safety ever in my career, because I did start out early on in my career reporting to women, primarily, coincidentally, who provided psychological safety. And I had no idea what it was. But when you have contrast, when you have psychological safety, and then you get promoted to another level and you get none, or you go to another organization where you don't have it, you realize real quick how valuable it is. It took me back to a lot of the stuff where they talked about Covey's work, The 7 Habits. And I always talk about The 7 Habits because I think it was my very first leadership book where I realized the importance of not just talking about it, but being about it, and how important integrity is. And I took that seriously, just like I took the Pledge of Allegiance seriously. And then I didn't realize that it was aspirational. Same thing with corporate environment. They post all these values and they put the EEOC in the break room, and, they tell you how inclusive they are in their videos to get you to come work there. And you get there and you're like, it's all lip service. They say bias is not the sharks, bias is the water. And I cannot for the life remember the inclusive mindset coach who said it. I have been dealing with sharks and trying to defend myself against the sharks in many ways and saying this is not okay, when I realized it's not the shark, it's the water. Like, the water is tainted and we got to do something about the water. And so in some way, this book, because I kept waking up in the middle of the night, like, my spirit was like, you got to write this book. You got to write this book. And I'm like, okay, all right, I'll follow you. In some way, this book was my way of changing the water, because it's providing a tool and insights as we all navigate through life. We can find something that says, no, there's a better way.
I want this broadcast really to help the people find you, Ameris, who need you, obviously they can order your book on Amazon, but organizations, they brought in Gallup and they brought in all these other
Mhm.
people. How do they bring in you? What do they need to do?
I have updated my website, ascend-transcend.com, and I have finally added a link for Calendly, which I've been we've procrastinating about, to have conversations with people. As a matter of fact, I just had a conversation with somebody last Saturday, a morning, about how we can create not just a speaking engagement to come talk to people, because speakers transform other people in some ways. I know I was transformed when I was growing up listening to Les Brown, but I also believe that I can create custom workshop for individuals who are ready, for inclusive leaders who are ready for that. And so I have one that I started conversations about. I didn't schedule through the website, but it did motivate me to update the website, because she said, Amervis, you need to have a way for people to connect with you and to have that discovery call about what is their situation. What situation are you in? Describe to me what problems you're having, and then we can solution together to customize a keynote or a workshop or a consultation program, something that would help bridge that gap that they're obviously feeling something isn't working. And I can help provide that in the most realist, authentic way possible. And it's not just about, hey, when can you extend the engagement? Because I really have always been the type of person that wants to make sure that if we have a goal together, that we are accomplishing that goal. How do you want to transform the situation you're in? Because my whole life is a whole transformation testament, from where I grew up and was born and raised and broke free from, to even being in corporate spaces where I really didn't belong there. But I was also able to still change lives. And I have people to this day, Gene, to this day, who will hit me up on LinkedIn and will let me know that something I did, I didn't even realize people are watching. People are watching what you do more than what you say. And something I had done back in the day inspired them to do something differently. They'll put recommendations on my LinkedIn profile, even though I don't need a corporate recommendation. Not right now. I will at some point perhaps, but they will put things on there where I encourage other people as I see it to go out there and go, if you don't believe me, the type of leader that I am verbally, go, feel free to go on my LinkedIn profile, scroll down to the bottom, because it's a pretty long one. I've lived a pretty long life. And you can see all the type of people that I have influenced from the beginning of my corporate career and in management. And they're all kinds of people. They're all shapes, colors, sizes. I'm not just about one certain type of person. And I've been able to affect lives across all perspectives, right? All gamuts of diversity, including diversification of thought.
This is something that I think is a good wrap up, Ameris. It just popped into my mind. If your grandmother could sit down with you today, what would you tell her and what do you think she'd tell you?
I think she would say she's grateful that I listened to my spirit and my inner guidance system. And that even though it took me a little bit to get there, I got there. And that's all that matters, that there was no need to be afraid of myself. I would say to her, thank you for being the strong, resilient, take no belief system BS from people and passing that down through my genes, because I really do recognize that the majority, I did get a lot of strength from all of my other ancestors, including my mother and my people who passed on. But I think it was the fire in her belly that was transferred over to me that really made me stand in my truth, even when others tried to knock me off my whatever I was standing on.
What's her name again?
My grandmother,
Yeah.
Catalina. But she had a very stern, serious, scary face, and that was her resting face. And at the time, we were scared, but I realized that her discipline was for good and not for evil. Putting in guardrails, they're guardrails for you. It's so that you don't get hurt. I'm grateful for that now. And I try to tell my own kids the same thing, is that when they try to say, oh, you're so overprotective, it's because the world is a scary place. And I want to make sure you know that Mama Bear is here and I want you to succeed, but I'm going to make sure that I do my part as a parent to not throw you out there when you're not ready to fly yet.
Season 4 of the VanRocha Podcast is sponsored by Elomia Health. Did you know it can take 3 to 6 months for a patient to get their first appointment with a psychiatrist or a therapist? That's a very long wait. The AI mental health chatbot by Elomia is available 24/7 and immediate. Why not test drive Elomia at elomia.com? That's ELOMIA. See the future of AI for great mental health today. This podcast was produced by CrossGen. Thanks for watching all the way to the end, and we'll see you in the next one.